Mad Rockweek's Serial, Chapter 25, Beating the Storm. They reached the cracked stone at the top and stepped through the broken archway of the green plantation's outer wall. John led, Maglite carving a narrow tunnel through the rain, gun high and ready. Joe stayed tight behind him, pistol in his right hand and a bulky 12-volt flashlight in his left. The kind you buy at a corner store because it's cheap and bright and you don't care if you survive the night. The yellow plastic looked ridiculous against the rot and thunder, but the beam cut clean. Barney brought up the rear, maglite and sidearm mirroring the others, backpack cinched hard across his shoulders. At the archway, Barney slowed. A stone slab rose beside him like an altar. He dropped the heavy bag onto it and sucked in air like he'd been punched. John and Joe didn't notice. They were already moving, already locked on the house. John approached the nearest opening. A doorway gaped beside a column of stone that might once have been a fireplace, climbing the exterior like a scar. He slowed and swept his light into the dark. "Sonny," he shouted, forcing the word through the storm. Rain ticked on the dead wood. The building answered with its own hollow echo. John tilted his head, listening, waiting for anything that sounded like a voice. Something tightened in his chest. "Is it him?" Joe asked, raising his gun. The inside went quiet in a way that felt intentional. "Detective?" John called again, louder now. Regret pressed into his breath. He turned and realized the third set of footsteps hadn't followed them. "Where's Barney?" Joe glanced back. Through the rain, he could still see the backpack sitting on the stone slab like a forgotten offering. He opened his mouth to answer and stopped. Something moved behind John. John caught the shift in Joe's face and spun, gun snapping up. "Took you long enough," Lerner said, soaked through and breathing hard from the climb down. He flicked a hand at the weapons. "Put that away." Relief hit John so fast it made him dizzy. Joe exhaled, then turned and headed back into the rain. "Barney?" "What?" Barney stepped out from behind a nearby tree, zipping his pants, scowling like he'd been interrupted mid-prayer. He slung the backpack over his shoulder. "Jesus." They moved inside together. The room opened into a wide living space dominated by a massive stone fireplace, one of the few things in the plantation that still looked like it had been built to last. Barney found a mostly dry patch of floor and unzipped the backpack. Out came the misery buffet, soggy sandwiches, crushed chips, dented cans of meat, and a couple of energy drinks that looked like they'd been refrigerated in hell. No one complained. They ate like men who've been hungry long enough to hate the sound of their own stomachs. "Did you get a hold of Abby?" John asked around wet chips. "Yeah," Joe cracked an energy drink. "She wasn't thrilled, but she said she'd do what she can." He tossed the empty can into the dark. The clang echoed too long, like the building was counting it. "How long's the storm?" John asked Barney. Barney sucked on his inhaler and wiped rain from his forehead. "Weather guy says it's part of that tropical wave that rolled in west of us. Won't clear till noon tomorrow." John stared at him. Then he snapped, "You've got to be shitting me." He kicked the wall. Rot collapsed like wet bread. Dust drifted down through the flashlight's beam. "We might get a break between bands," Barney added quickly. "Around midnight. It won't last 15 minutes, maybe." John went still, running the numbers like a hostage negotiation. Wet, hurt, low fuel, a boat that wanted to die, darkness full of teeth. "We go in that window," he said. "Use it to get downstream. Maybe it's enough to keep us afloat." "Johnny," Lerner coughed, chip spraying from his lips. He grinned like a man about to pull a rabbit from a hat. "Johnny, have I got a surprise for you." He pointed towards the stairs. John looked at Joe and Barney. "Search what you can downstairs. Stay in the building. Don't split up." They nodded, relieved. John followed Lerner up the stairs to the third floor. A few candles still burned there, thin flames fighting damp air, casting sick light across wax trails and wall drawings. The air felt different, drier, tighter, sealed by habit. Lerner limped to the stone fireplace and yanked open a hidden closet. Wood scarred it like it had been forced before. "Watch the glass," he said. "I shot a dusty mirror earlier. Damn thing nearly stopped my heart." John stepped carefully inside. The rot gave way to something arranged. Not clean, not neat. Kept. A den. Downstairs, Joe and Barney began their search. Their lights crawled over walls and doorways like insects. "This beats night patrol in Neverland," Joe offered, forcing casual. Barney laughed once and went quiet again. He spotted a thick wire dipping from high on the wall, too new to belong here. Fresh brackets. He followed it to the next room. "What you got?" Joe asked. Barney tilted his beam upward. "Lights," he said. "Wired." Above them, John and Lerner didn't hear. Upstairs, Lerner knelt and dragged a military ammo box from the closet corner. Army green, heavy, lid opened with a reluctant squill. Inside, jewelry, rings, coins, necklaces, charms, other people's lives reduced to pocket weight. "We need this," Lerner said, sifting with reverent hunger. "Pawn box. This is his pawn box." "Shine here," Lerner said suddenly. John angled the mag light. A small gold chain dangled between Lerner's fingers. He scratched at the dark crust on its broken links. "This," Lerner grinned, eyes burning, "is a Livingston family chain, and I'll bet that's Bud Livingston's blood." John sat back onto the closet mattress, springs biting into his spine. Something felt wrong. Not the horror, but the absence of it. Author's Point flashed in his mind. Barrels, gutters, theater. And here, this place whispered. It waited. Where were the traps, the bone pits? He shifted and felt something hard beneath the mattress. A slow smile creeped in. Of course. He lifted the mattress. Leather. A bundled pouch flattened like a crushed shoebox. Lerner froze. They stared at it together. Neither of them knew what they were about to open. Outside, Joe and Barney followed the wire trail back into the rain. Barney searched for the power lines. Found none. "There's a fire escape over here," Joe said, "but weird, sloped like a handicap ramp." "Handicap ramp?" Barney muttered. They found it, running up the wall like a rusted tongue. Barney climbed. Joe followed. The ramp shuddered. Thunder made it feel alive. "Please don't kill us," Barney growled. "Then hurry," Joe snapped. Lightning struck nearby. The ramp flexed away from the wall. Joe slipped. Barney caught him. Joe dangled, gasping. Barney hauled him up. They laid on the roof, rain pounding them flat. 10 feet away sat a generator strapped to steel braces. Around it, gasoline barrels. The rain drummed on them like marching feet. "He's got power?" Barney said softly. Then, that sound again. Metal, screaming. Both men went pale. Back upstairs, John opened the leather bundle. Smaller pouches stitched inside, each branded with a name. The third read Garrison. John opened it. Empty. "Try another," Lerner urged. John opened Jonah. Razors spilled into the light. 6 of them, polished, honored. On the leather beneath them, the name Green burned deep. 2 pouches were empty. Lerner swallowed. "He's maintained them," he said, "like waiting." John pulled a carved bone object from the hidden fold, crescent-shaped, hold. "An ocarina?" Lerner said. "A whistle," John muttered. The sound of the metal scream returned. Closer. John looked at Lerner. Joe and Barney? They ran. Outside, Barney and Joe slid around the side of the plantation, ass first, into mud. They skidded and stopped. Are y'all okay? Joe yelled. Yes, John shouted. Are you? They regrouped fast. He's got a generator, Barney said. Might power the whole place. John felt the spark. We found evidence. And razors, Lerner added. They argued, sharp, fast, tired, until Joe shouted, Guys! They froze. Joe rubbed his fingers together. Does anybody remember we're between the storm bands? John felt it then. Adrenaline. Barney looked sick. Only Lerner smiled. Because 15 minutes wasn't just their way out. It was their way in. Chapter 26, Witnessing Firsthand the Growth of the Alligator Population. We're not done. Sonny jabbed a finger toward the plantation with a piss and vinegar only the elderly can weaponize. John grabbed his shoulder, trying to hold him still, trying to hold the moment together. We'll come back. We've got enough for now. You even said so. We can't risk our lives like this. Lerner pulled away. His eyes were bright, desperate. What if there's more? I know there's more here. John said, stressing each word like a stake driven into the ground, won't risk our lives, Lawson. There's more here and you know it. Give me another hour, tops, please, Lerner begged through grinding dentures. John pointed toward the others. You either go help them get the boat ready while I grab our shit and then leave with us, or you stay here. Either way, me and these two are leaving now. You're going to run this, John, Lerner muttered as they moved. You're running this. John didn't answer. He turned and ran back into the towering giant of rotten regret, maglite flickering along the corridor as he sprinted. Barney led them around the plantation toward the dock. Joe, get the packs we brought and meet us at the rocks, he called. Joe nodded and disappeared into the first floor doorway. They passed the stone slab again and Barney slowed, letting Lerner catch up. He nodded toward one of the tables. That's a cleaning table, Barney said, voice different now, like a man realizing what kind of place he was standing in. What's a cleaning table? Lerner asked, breathless. The table hunters used to cut up their catches. Never seen a stone one, but I'll bet my ass that's a cleaning table. They reached the crumbled stone dock. Barney shined his light down the 8-foot embankment to the muddy beach below. The calm between storm bands had called the wildlife back. 2 gators lay in the mud near the boat, still as driftwood, until the light hit them and their eyes returned it. Barney swallowed, didn't move. Inside, Joe found the corner store backpacks where they'd left them. Distant thunder made him flinch. It sounded closer than before. Their window was closing. He didn't bother zipping the packs. He grabbed what he could and ran, leaving a trail of junk food behind him like breadcrumbs for idiots. Upstairs, John reached the den as the flashlight dimmed. 2 quick smacks against his palm and it flickered back to life. He went straight to the closet and yanked out the ammo case, the pawn box, heavy with jewelry and coins. He dragged it near the leather spread and started folding the razor kits back up. The flashlight flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed him. In the black, John felt the storm returning. It felt like pressure in his teeth. He gathered the leather bundle against his chest and grabbed the ammo case with his free hand. He started for the stairs, moving by memory, by instinct, by the layout he'd already walked a dozen times. Doubt tried to climb into him. Maybe Lawson's right. Maybe there's more. Maybe tonight's the night it ends for good. Thunder boomed close. Maybe that hadn't been thunder. Maybe that had been a gunshot. Down at the rocks, Barney kept his sidearm trained on the gators below. How many bullets you got? Lerner asked, sweeping his light across the cove. More eyes stared back than he liked. Joe arrived at a jog. Why'd y'all stop? He looked down. Oh, good reason. He chuckled once, then his face tightened. What now, geniuses? Get your gun out, Barney snapped. He dumped the food from the packs and shoved one at Lerner, then set the other aside for John. Barney slid over the first rock and began climbing down. Joe leaned out. What do you want me to do? Cover me, Barney waved back. I've got 3 flares stuck in the boat. What the fuck is that gonna do? Joe yelled, waving his gun at the sky like it might answer him. Barney stopped and shouted up with as much clarity as he could force into his voice. Just cover me, Joe. Joe? Don't shoot me. From inside the building, John moved, blind through the creaking emptiness, storm pressure tightening around him. The leather bundle slipped in his arms. He adjusted, and the ammo case banged his thigh, his grip failing. He stumbled. The ammo case hit the floor sideways. The lid popped open. Metal clanged. Jewelry shifted. The leather kits slid and vanished under a large cover like the building itself had swallowed them. John dropped to his knees in the mud and clawed through the mess, heart racing. No way he was getting all of it down those rocks. He grabbed the razor kit, couldn't find the others, and snatched the ammo tin. Then he ran. Below, Barney reached the beach. Joe shouted from above, confused and nervous. What do you want me to do? Cover me, Barney hissed. Joe's hands shook. Then a shot cracked the air. Barney froze halfway down, perched on the largest stone. What the fuck? He screamed. Joe called down, offended and terrified. You told me to cover you, so I did. You almost shot the boat, you half-wit, Barney spat, climbing down. The gunshots scared the gators off the beach for the moment, but now Barney feared Joe's aim almost as much as the reptiles. Don't sink the boat, he shouted, and don't sink me. Lerner started down the rocks. Joe watched him like he'd lost his mind. What are you doing? Lerner didn't answer. He slid down on his ass, breathing hard, stubborn as a nail. Barney jumped into the boat and yanked one of the flares free. He struck it. Red light bloomed. And in that glow he saw the truth. The cove wasn't hosting 2 gators. It was hosting an audience. Shapes in the water, eyes everywhere. Along the root-infested bank, 3 small ones slid into the river like they'd been waiting for a cue. Barney plugged the drain and looked up at them. Hurry! John burst out onto the stones under the archway just as the thunder cracked again. He found the backpack Barney had left. In seconds, the ammo tin was emptied into it. He shoved the razor kits in under the zipper, which protested and ripped. He stepped onto the first rock and screamed down the embankment. Start the engine! Can't, Barney yelled back, relief flashing across his face when he saw John. They're too close to it. John moved down carefully, one slippery rock at a time. Joe used a paddle to pull the nose of the boat into position. Then John saw it. A gator head slithered onto the beach, trying to come around the stones. John was just one rock from sand. Joe didn't think. He fired 5 times into the roots, praying the noise would buy him space. It did. The head vanished into the cove. The splashing hit everything. John dropped into the boat and shoved the nose away from the shore. The boat sank lower under the combined weight. Water rose until it hovered less than an inch from swallowing the top of the aluminum. John's stomach turned. The chaos settled. Almost. Then Lerner's beam found something in the shallows. A baby alligator twitched, dying in the tiny waves. You shot a baby, John shouted, disbelief slicing through the storm. I didn't know it was there, Joe whined. Barney started the engine, drowning out the argument. Mist thickened into rain again as the boat crept towards the mouth of the cove. Behind them, a low, long growl rose through the storm. John didn't bother pretending. He knew exactly what it was. Now's a good time to speed up, Barney. I have to be careful, Barney snapped. If I catch a root or a stone with the prop, we'll be paddling the sinking ship. He guided the boat toward the open river. The growl got louder. Then came the hiss and the splash that finally broke Barney's caution. "Get another flare," he yelled. Joe grabbed a second flare and crouched towards the back. "No, don't come back here," Barney waved him away. "Too much weight." John and Lerner shifted forward, trying to balance the swaying boat. Joe tried again. "Get the flare away from the engine," Barney roared. "I don't want to be cooked before they eat me." "What do I do? It's burning me," Joe yelped, waving it like a lunatic. "Throw it behind us," Barney shouted. "Past the boat." Joe tossed it. It landed 3 feet from the engine. "Jesus, Joe," Barney began, then froze. A very large gator glided past the floating flare. The mother didn't flinch. She swam right at them. She swam with them in sight. Barney gunned the motor and blasted through the brush at the exit. The boat burst into stronger river currents. The nose snapped hard left and drifted. "Guns," Joe said, pointing. Dark shapes floated around them. John counted a dozen, spooked, out of the cove, pissed and close. Barney fought for control as teeth snapped at the hole. John hesitated, with the last flare in hand. "If we run into more ahead, we might need it." Barney didn't look at him. "We need it now." John struck it. The river answered with hissing and growls. And then John recognized the shoreline. Horror tightened in his throat. "The bridge!" he screamed. "Any moment it'll be beneath us. Turn!" Barney tried. Too late. The boat caught and the rear spun. A stone column jarred the front up as the hull ground along the hidden bridge. "What the fuck is that?" Barney screamed. The rear slammed the next pillar, denting a fragile bulge in the bottom. An alligator lunged over the gunwale. Joe swung the oar, batting at it blindly. "Get us out of here! We're stuck!" Barney gunned the motor. The belly of the boat kept grinding, aluminum thinning with every inch. John snatched the paddle from Joe and shoved his gun into Joe's hand. Lerner fired into the swarming water. John planted the paddle, felt for the next pillar a few feet ahead of the bow, and pushed down. The boat lurched. "You're gonna flip us," someone shouted. Joe, maybe, or the storm. John pushed harder, grinding the boat across like a man trying to drag a coffin over his grave. Chapter 27. Dying hope sounds like a sharp, ferocious grinding, quickly silenced by a series of loud pops. Have you ever heard the sound hope makes when it dies? For these men, it came as a sharp, ferocious grinding, metal screaming against metal, stone screaming against metal, quickly silenced by a short series of loud pops. After that, there was only the long, winding whistle of an engine giving up the ghost. The high-pitched whine cut through the night like a dental drill, sharp enough to send the gators flipping back into the black water. The boat rocked in the swift current, motorless now, directionless, drifting wherever the river decided it ought to go. An uneasy calm followed, the kind that only comes after something loud and terrible has already happened. Barney reached down and killed the engine completely. The whining stopped. He exhaled, long and shaky, grateful at least the current was still pulling them forward instead of spinning them in place like a toy in the bathtub. Detective Lerner dug through his cartoon backpack, not really looking for anything, just keeping his hands busy. His body throbbed with a deep electric ache, and a darker pain settled in behind it, quiet but persistent. Doubt had weight, he realized. It pressed on his chest. Joe sat stiff as a fence post, eyes locked on the water. He waited for a ripple, a shape, the slow rise of teeth breaking the surface. John stood at the bow, listening to the river lap up against the hull. The sound was almost peaceful. That bothered him more than the engine failure. "Well," John said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land, "at least it's not raining." He honestly couldn't remember when the storm had stopped, only that it had, sometime between one bad moment and the next. The others noticed it too. Relief showed itself in small ways. A loosened shoulder, a breath finally let out, But John noticed something else entirely. The water didn't feel right. "Sonny," he said, his voice tight now, stripped of humor. "This isn't the Nevers River, is it?" The question hung there, heavy and unwelcome. "Shit," Lerner muttered. Looking up, his eyes moved to the banks, then back to the water. "No, this is the Zell." Panic crept into the old detective's voice, thin but sharp. "We have to get off this river. If it carries us much further, it'll dump us straight into the bog south of these woods." John swallowed as the current tugged them along, indifferent. "Well then," he said, slowly, "where the hell is our damn river?" Barney lunged for the motor, tearing into it with frantic hands. Joe and John grabbed their paddles and started rowing, muscles burning as the boat fought them every inch of the way. Lerner stayed seated, shivering, not just from the cold, but from the wet, aching need for all this to mean something. Somehow, though the effort and luck they didn't dare name, they found a narrow canal feeding back towards the Nevers River. The paddles bit into water, the boat groaned, slowly, agonizingly, slowly. They clawed their way back onto the right course, towards Port Nevers Park, toward the place they'd launched what felt like a lifetime ago. The engine coughed, once, then again. Finally, it caught, sputtering and weak but alive. No one cheered. They rode home in silence, cold and soaked as the rain crept back in, fine and steady. The river whispered around them. No one listened anymore. Dawn was just breaking through the low gray when they reached Port Nevers. They unloaded quickly, gear, evidence, themselves, moving with the stiff efficiency of men who wanted to be anywhere else. As soon as they were clear of the boat, gunshots cracked through the morning. 3 of them. Barney stood there with his weapon drawn, smoke curling from the barrel. Water poured through the fresh holes in the hull, the old boat settling fast, groaning as it filled with water. "What the hell, man?" Joe shouted. John stared at Barney, something cold blooming in his gut. "What are you doing?" Barney looked down at the sinking wreck, then back at them. He chuckled softly, eyes bright with something that didn't quite fit. "Retiring my sea legs," he said. The boat slipped under, taking the night with it. Chapter 28. Sunk Ships. The Rook room was dead quiet, the kind of quiet that had weight to it. The only sound came from John and Lerner shuffling back and forth, plastic evidence bags whispering against one another. It had been 6 hours since Barney sank his boat. Barney and Joe had managed a few hours of sleep. The other 2 detectives were still upright on adrenaline, caffeine, corner store speed, and a desperation that tasted metallic in the mouth. Abby watched them work, wide-eyed and alert in the way the others weren't. That was the difference a full night's sleep made. You could see it on her, clarity edged with concern. You heard the footsteps before the door opened. Clean footsteps, hard soles, shoes that never stepped in the mud unless someone else had already cleaned it up. The room stiffened as they came closer. Dredd entered the Rook room wearing a suit. Mayor Moores didn't look angry at first. He looked tired. Not their kind of tired, but tired enough to feel dangerous. "Words cannot express my utter disbelief," he said, and then laughed. It wasn't humor. It was anger with teeth. "What's next for you people? Burn down another historical landmark? Trespass into a different state? Break into Fort Knox and lose some gold while you're at it?" "How dramatic," Barney muttered from the far side of the room. Moore snapped his head towards him. "Shut it, citations boy. Unlawful use of a firearm in city limits. Unauthorized sinking of an unofficial maritime vessel. Should I keep going?" Barney sat down. Abby stepped forward. "We've got evidence linking Garrison Green to the Livingston murder." "That was a mistake." "Oh good," the mayor said, laughing again, "because the problem with that, aside from the fact that it's probably collected outside your jurisdiction, is that we already know who the fuck the killer is." He paused, breath hitching, then leaned into it. "Your job is to find him, stop him, make him go away. Am I clear?" "We need evidence to convict," Abby shot back. "In this town?" Moore scoffed. "We can use the fucking eyewitnesses." He waved a hand, already done with the thought. "I'm sure we'll be fine." Abby didn't respond. She just shut down, like a door closing, soft but permanent. "This is where we are," the mayor continued. "Skinnerd and I have put our careers on the line for you. There are officials who think we can't handle our own mess. They want the FBI involved. We vote tomorrow." Lerner cleared his throat. "If we go back to the Green Plantation with a small team, he's got to return there eventually, right?" Moore stared at him as if he'd spoken another language. "No one," he said slowly, "is crossing state lines again. No one is going back to the plantation. Do I make myself clear?" The silence answered for him. "What do you want us to do?" John asked. His voice sounded older than the night before. Moore's didn't hesitate. "Your job, John. Your job. Find Garrison or find another career. That applies to all of you." He turned and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the glass, then stomped down the hallway, every step a punctuation mark. Joe watched the door swing shut. After a moment, he smiled. "Well," he said, "that went well." No one laughed.